derby, and Spurs against Arsenal today. It went the way of Arsenal. So Richard Butler will be happy enough. Theo Delaney perhaps not quite so. Didn't see it today, boys. I was at the cricket at Lords with my club winning a final at the home of cricket. But what about at the Arsenal home today then, Richard? What sort of game was it?
Well, I mean, obviously it ended up being a good game because we got the 3 points, but it was quite a strange game in many ways. Arsenal didn't play particularly well. You could see we missed Martin Ødegaard, but it was one of those type of throwback George Graham type performances, you know, a 1-0 away from home with a goal from a set piece from a central defender wearing number 6. We've seen it all before, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. In fact, I kind of enjoyed that game more today than some of the games where we've maybe played all this. You were talking about it before when you were mentioning the previous game about the ticky-tacky football, which obviously Arteta is a big advocate of Pep's style. And sometimes a game like today is quite refreshing to watch. And it did remind me a little bit of the 1980s when we used to beat Tottenham a few times away from home with similar kind of performances. And yes, there's concerns there in terms of squad depth. Look at the bench today, full of academy players. And we've only really got 2 or 3 players actually injured out of the team. So that was a bit of a concern with the games we've got coming up next week, Man City, etc. But, you know, today we dug in. We didn't create an awful lot, really, in open play, 2 or 3 in the first half, and we didn't really create anything in the second half, funnily enough, and then we got the goal. But to me, this team is so organised and solid defensively that it doesn't matter too much. You know, yes, we haven't got a proper out-and-out centre-forward, and that is still a slight concern. But when we're so solid at the back, then to me, that's where you build from. You know, the goalkeeper now has made a massive difference. He brings a calmness there. We've got the 2 best centre-backs probably in Europe at the moment. William Saliba, fantastic today. Gabriel, brilliant performance and gets the goal. And, you know, as long as we don't get injuries in those particular areas of the team, we're not going to lose too many games, and we don't even have to play that well now. And that's almost an ironic thing, really, because with Mikel Arteta, since he's been at Arsenal, if Arsenal didn't play well, quite often we wouldn't win. Now, away from home, we've gone to Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago, didn't play particularly well, could have been 2-0 down, got a goal from a set piece, won the game 2-0. Today, very, very similar game, not playing particularly well, getting a goal from a set piece and winning the game. And, you know, we've let in 3 goals away from home in the Premier League in 2024. Just 3, that's incredible. And, you know, obviously Man City next week's going to be a little bit of a different test, I'm sure. But how we're doing it is just literally by shoring up that defence. We're not conceding goals at all. We're not even conceding chances. How many shots on target really did Tottenham have today? You know, maybe 2. And they were straight at the goalkeeper, really. Didn't have a hard save to make, really, did he? Apart from very early on, and that was it. And that's due to our defensive structure. And to be honest with you, I'm enjoying it because it's a George Graham type Arsenal. And for me, we can't get any much better than that.
Well, 1-0 to the Arsenal. But, exactly. I do believe that we can't just continue this tippy-tappy football now and the strategic play and everything like that. Theo, if I can come to you and talk about this as well, as far as you're concerned there. I mean, you know, quite early for a North London derby, but where was the creativity then in front of goal?
Well, Spurs actually played quite well, but unfortunately Spurs have played well in all their games this season. They've got very little to show for it. And Richard completely stole my assessment of the game when he said it was like the 80s. It was exactly like that.
Well, that's...
You know, Tottenham play Arsenal, Tottenham play all the football, they try and be enterprising, play some good-looking stuff. Arsenal sit quite deep, not very ambitious, but defend incredibly well and know that against Spurs, you're likely to have chances on the break and from set pieces. You only need to score 1 and then shut up shop. It was exactly like that. It reminded me of the 83 semi-final, actually, at Wembley. 93, I should say. Yeah. They did, It was almost exactly the same game. And I love that Richard and I are obviously a similar vintage because I love that he loves it. Because, of course, it's grim, but it works. And Spurs, with all these, you know, principles and ambitions, and Ange being the absolute epitome of those great Tottenham traditions, we've got 4 points from 4 games, and we've been the better team in every one of them. But it's meaningless, doesn't mean a thing.
What do you do then? What would you, as fans, what are you talking about as you leave the ground with that?
People are asking questions about Ange. These are the questions. Is it the system? Has he got? Is it the case that his system, which has been so successful and everywhere else he's worked, once you get to this level, which is a higher level than he's ever worked at before, you're against better coaches and better players, and this system, this completely kind of gung-ho system, just is not going to prevail when you're playing multi-million-pound teams with the best coaches in the world. That's one question. The other question is, wait a minute, maybe it would prevail maybe it's the players. Maybe we've got a bunch of really good players, but not elite level players. Actually, if you look at the attackers we had today, all good players. Kulusevski, good player. Johnson, good player. Son, obviously, maybe he's exceptional. Maybe he is world class. Madison, really good player. We brought good players on. Odegaard, Werner, he's an international player. And you think they're playing his system, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're good, but not that good. Maybe they're 8 out of 10 players. But when you're in this league, to play that way and to win, you need better players than that. So is it the players that he's got at his disposal? Is his system just doomed to failure in this league? Or have we just been a bit unlucky? Do we keep going and play like this and dominate every game? And maybe the results will come. Remember, it was only Solanke's it was his home debut today. He hasn't settled in yet. Maybe it'll start to click.
Yeah. Look, hold it there, boys. I'm coming back to you in just a few minutes or so. Just to let you know that the Solheim Cup, it was a terrific competition over 3 days. And it was Liao Vu who actually clinched the half a point needed late on with just 3 matches left out on course. In Virginia there, and so it's a win for the USA, who hold the Solheim Cup for the first time in 4 meetings. So 2 years down the line, be back again in Europe, but it is now the Solheim Cup that belongs to the USA. We'll be talking plenty of golf with Jeremy Dale later on in the show tonight. And next, more from Richard and from Theo on that North London derby.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're talking football right now. We're talking Spurs against Arsenal, an Arsenal victory at Spurs today. Richard Butler over an Arsenal podcaster, The Spurs Show, Life Goals. Brilliant series, that Life Goals, if you haven't. There's so many great people who've been involved with that over many years, Theo, hasn't there, as well? I like to sort of dip back into those. There'll be a few that you've recorded on that sort of thing in the past who will have liked the older way of playing football with a new twist these days in many ways. And I do just wonder how close we are in the next 2-3 seasons with what's happening in the States, what's happening in the Middle East, and what's happening to Infantino and everyone else. And they're even saying if we don't watch it, we won't be able to have our own side in the next championship internationally that's happening in the United Kingdom. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So let's go back to the football. And I think that, OK, we know what Pep has done. It's been great. It's got players falling down when they get injured. They're cheating everywhere they possibly can. Let's get back to a little bit more of balls, if I can put it that way, that we can... we know that somebody that gets the odd elbow or whatever isn't just going to fall down as if they're dead. And we're going to get more action as opposed to these little breaks when somebody's injured. It just, for me, has become so systematic. I want to see again the differences, the little bits of class, the bits that get you out of your seat, Theo.
Yeah. I mean, but at this, football now is such a huge business and winning is everything. And managers will send their teams out to do whatever they can and they will stretch and bend the rules as much as possible. So, the only way that's going to stop is if they can be punished and they're disincentivized to do the cynical things, feigning injury, wasting time, and all the rest of it. So that's something that's got to come from officialdom and from the football authorities. They tend to try these things and then never really see them through. I mean, time wasting. We saw it again today. We see it endlessly, and there doesn't seem to be. I thought when they started adding on like 12 minutes on the end of every game, it would stop, but they've even backed off on that. Really,
yeah.
They always back off on these things. Yeah. I despair like you. I mean, I'd rather see a lot more football and a lot less cynicism. But every club does it. There's no exceptions
because all the way down the leagues.
Yeah, because every manager will do whatever they need to do in order to win. Yeah, that's the way it is. So until they're disincentivised, they won't stop. Yeah,
no, look, you make some good points on that. Richard, you were nodding your head there, of course, in agreement with that. I do, I have enjoyed a lot of our football over the previous years. I think you've got to be there to see the way that Pep Guardiola's sides play, and now others have followed that. You can't see it so much on the television because the pitch is not big enough, the picture, even whatever screen, to show the whole pitch, and you need to see that to see the way that they're playing that sort of game, and we're missing out on that. But I just so much for me at the moment. This ridiculous international charade that we've just had for these Nations League, which were great when all we ever had were ridiculous friendlies, but now they're just as bad as ridiculous friendlies. And right at the start of our season, come on, no.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's you've got players like Bernardo Silva complaining that there's too much football, and then they're adding on more pointless international games into the calendar. And now they've got the Champions League, which they've expanded even more. So now there's 8 group games, whatever it is, instead of 4, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, you want to get the quality of the game to be better. Now, I totally agree. What football looks like now, it looks almost like a well-produced TV show. The way teams play, it's so choreographed that there's nothing off the cuff that happens anymore. And it's almost like you mentioned it a bit earlier about even lower league football doing it now, playing it out from the back and trying to play these little circles, beating the press, all this kind of stuff, right? Which looks pretty on the TV, but actually is quite boring when you get it constantly. Every single game's the same. You don't see much different, and
they can't do it. They can't do it in League One, a lot of them. That's my league. That's where I watch my football at the moment. They're not good enough at it. They don't want to do it, half of them.
No, and to be honest with you, you want to watch. Sometimes it's nice to watch lower league football, or it's nice to watch maybe football from elsewhere in Europe when you see a different style of game. Very rarely in a Premier League. If you watch a Premier League game, you pretty much know what both teams are going to do before it starts. I say it's like a Netflix show, isn't it? Yeah. That's what football become in a Premier League, and that's why today I quite enjoyed the game today, because it wasn't really like that. From both teams, I thought. I mean, Spurs probably had more possession of the ball. They did, but they didn't really play that kind of Pep Guardiola way. Arsenal didn't play it at all this week, maybe because Martin Odegaard's missing and we can't play that system without him. Declan Rice was missing, and we played more of a, like I said, an 80s style. And I would like to see football revert a little bit to that. You know, all this playing, you know, all the positions on the pitch now, you've got a number 6 or a number 8. No, we haven't. What we should have is a central midfield player, a central defender, a striker. Yeah. That's the position. It's not the number on their shirt. They wear number 41 or they wear number 27. You know what I mean? Let's go back to the basics of football. And the basics isn't knocking it back to your goalkeeper, out to your centre-half, play it to your left-back, back to your centre-half, back to your... That's not football. No. That's a choreographed routine. Let's just play football. Yeah, get the balls in the front players. Let's get the ball in the box. Let's have some excitement. Let's have some goals. Let's not roll around every time you get someone run past you and blows in.
Yeah, no,
let's get back to what we used to enjoy. And everyone will say, well, football's more polished now, the players are better, they're fitter and all that. Yeah, they are. But I personally find it more boring to watch now than it was in the 80s when the pitches weren't very good, you know, the grounds weren't very good, but actually the football itself was exciting because you didn't know what was going to happen next. Now, you know what's going to happen. You know Arsenal are going to go away and win 1-0. You know Man City are going to go 1-0 down at home to Brentford and win 2-1 because you know that's going to happen. You don't get those shock results anymore, do you? No. Man City are probably going to win the league again, aren't they? Let's be honest. No. Well, we see what happens with their charges, I suppose, but, you know...
Well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing, though, Richard, with all of this. You know, they fudged something else there. If you've got 115 charges, apparently more, we're talking about this later on in this hour as... not in this hour, later on in the show we are. And, you know, all of these things, you nearly think, well, nothing's going to get done. And if it is, it's going to be pushed. They're going to play it across the back again for the next 3 or 4 years until somebody seems to forget about it. Isn't it, Theo? I mean, this is all ridiculous. But it's the same. I watched a club... Like we drew 4-4 at home, having been 4-1 down Cambridge United the other week. And Gary Monk brought on... who is a young youth player of ours who is absolutely as quick as they come, about 5'7", 5'8", changed the game. We came back to 4-4. Yesterday, we went to Mansfield and I was there too. We're trying to play this stuff out from the back now. We can't score enough goals. We're never going to score enough goals. We're doing stupid things at the back. We concede. Instead of bringing him on again... and having the raw pace and having a go, we bring on 2 loan signings from other clubs who don't want to be there and are just not off a job. And that is what is wrong with football up and down the land for me at the moment.
It must be Sunday night because we're all post-trauma here. Well, obviously, Richard's got a warm glow about him.
Yeah, he
Arsenal have won in the style they used to win when he was a teenager. But you and I are in a terrible 2-8. But we're afflicted. There's nothing we can do about it. We're afflicted and addicted, and we just have to deal with it. I really felt your pain there, Mark.
Yeah. I know we have to deal with it, but if I think about what Chris did or Gaza or whatever, or... you know, when Thierry Henry suddenly did something extraordinary, or Dennis Bergkamp, we were out of our seats. You don't they don't do that anymore.
Oh, they're still great.
They're still good, great players, but they're on the leash. They all have to do what they're told to do. Yeah, they are on the leash. I mean, you only have to look at what happened to old. I keep calling him Tony Grealish. Grealish, remember Tony Grealish? Yeah, Jack Grealish. I mean, you look at him; he was an absolute, genuine maverick, Gaza style. You know, could do anything. And at Villa, he was so great to watch. You didn't know what he was going to do next. They pay £100 million for him, and you're right. They've turned him into a robot. He's not allowed to do anything spontaneous. Why spend the money? And not even allowed to play for England at a major tournament.
No, didn't even get there, which is a terrible shame. So it's this. Actually, you know what? It's the same problems. Just they've come about in different ways. Because of course, in the 70s and 80s, we were moaning about England not properly using the real geniuses. You know, people like Rodney Marsh and Glenn Hoddle and all the rest of it. Now they're not using them because they've coached all the spontaneity out of them. I mean,
the trouble is, though, and I understand what it is, as far as the football clubs are concerned, you know, it's always going to be full for a North London derby, but there are so many tourists now who go to all these games in the Premier League. It's nearly part of... It's like if you go to Italy, you want to either go, you want to go and see the Colosseum, you possibly want to go to the Olympic Stadium and watch Lazio or somebody, you definitely want to go and see the Sistine Chapel. Well, now in here, they definitely want to go to Old Trafford or North London. They want to go and buy their tickets where everyone else is buying the full price twice over for the West End on a Saturday afternoon. This is the problem. They're filling the grounds without real fans being able to afford to get in.
Yeah, well, that's only going to get more pronounced as well because it's a free market, isn't it? It's a like dynamic pricing. You know, they talked about all that with the Oasis tickets. It's the same thing. They'll charge the most they can get. Yeah. And, you know, your traditional local fans are going to be priced out for that very reason. Ordinary people who live around in places like Tottenham and you know, near the old Highbury, other parts of London, all the working class areas where most of the big clubs are. For the most part, they're not going to be able to afford to go, and it's become that kind of entertainment, or it's certainly becoming that kind of entertainment.
Well, let's hope this season, and we're going to speak more. And I'm going to come back to you now, Richard. And you know, I do want to get out of my seat in front of the telly now and again, which I don't at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't be watching Arsenal then because we've gone back to the 1-0, haven't we? So you're not going to get out of your seat much watching Arsenal. Probably I'm expecting to win a lot of games, but maybe not any exciting. I think we all want a bit more spontaneity on the pitch, don't we? We all want to see a player do something unexpected, and it's almost like you said, they're not allowed to do that at the moment. I mean, will the bubble burst? Will the Pep bubble burst when he leaves the Premier League, maybe at the end of this season or whenever it is? Will teams start to change the way that they play again? I don't know. I'm hoping they do, because everything comes in cycles, doesn't it? You know, back in the 1920s, you used to have 3 defenders and 8 attackers, whatever it was, and then football changed, didn't it, to the 4-4-2, and now it's changing again. And maybe in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, it might either go backwards to what we had before, or maybe something new will come along, which actually might be better. We don't know, do we? We just have to, like you said, we're addicted to it. We've got no choice. We have to suffer what there is and hope that it's going to get better and things will change. The ticket prices will come down and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, Arsenal won 1-0 at Tottenham, so I don't really care at this point.
No, I know you don't. And Theo, for you, just to talk about a different subject, Theo, goals and everything, like life goals. Well, who have you got? Have you got some more good ones coming up in the can?
I've got some really good ones coming up. I've got Asif Kapadia, the brilliant filmmaker, who's just announced he's going to make one of his brilliant films on Kenny Dalglish, by the way. Brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah. I've got Gideon Coe from Six Music coming up. I've done some really good ones. I had Seb Hutchinson on recently, actually, the commentator, brilliant commentator, and his theory, and it's just a theory, but he lays it out really well. He reckons Guardiola will definitely be the next England manager. So we've got that to look forward to.
Thank you. don't miss a Theo Folian live goals, which is brilliant, and also, of course, the Over an Arsenal podcast with Richard Butler. Always great to have them on the show at Full Tilt. Keith Hackett, Mark Halsey. Refs next.